So for binomial denominators, we want to find the lowest common denominator. And to do this, we need to just make sure that we're clear that when we have binomial factors, that we are clear what the factors are. Okay, so we know that the x by itself is not a factor, the minus 1 itself is not a factor, same here, the x and the plus 3. The whole factor, the whole binomial, represents a multiplying piece here, same here. Okay, so the common denominator then ends up being, I'm just going to highlight this, so we have a factor here and a factor here. So our lowest common denominator is just those two factors together. So here I have factors as well. So I have one factor here. I've got, I'll do this in different colors. I've got a second factor here, and I have a third factor here. Okay, so we have three factors involved. So the lowest common denominator has to have three factors. There are three different factors involved. So lowest common denominator just ends up being, well, this one is just missing the blue and the green, so we need 5, 2x plus 7, and x plus 2. Okay, so it's a combination of all the individual factors becomes our lowest common denominator. So to then add these together, we need to show our common denominator. So in fact, let's actually add these together here. So let's work out the lowest common denominator. Okay, so I'm going to multiply the top and the bottom by the factors that are missing. So I need to multiply by 5, multiply by 2x plus 7. I need to do the same to the top to balance the fraction. Here I need to multiply by x plus 2, balance the fraction with an x plus 2 here. So my new fraction looks like this. 5, let's actually multiply out the brackets there, so we end up with 10x plus 35 plus 5 times 2x plus 7 times x plus 2 plus x plus 2 and the same denominator. Okay, so there's our common denominator. Now we can just combine like terms in the top. So we end up with 11x plus 37. And that's all over the lowest common denominator of 5 times 2x plus 7. The 2x plus 7 again represents one factor. X plus 2 represents another factor. Okay, so here, before we can find the lowest common denominator here, we need to write this in its factored form so we can see all the multiplying pieces, because these being plus pieces, they don't tell us nothing about the factors. So our first step then is going to be we factor the denominators. So we're going to end up with x plus 2, x plus 3. The second fraction, we're going to end up with x plus 3, x plus 1. So here we have denominator pieces of x plus 2, x plus 3, which is shared, and an x plus 1. So to get a common denominator, what we must do is make sure that each of the denominators have all the factors involved. So here we have three different factors, so we need to have an x plus 1 factor, an x plus 2 factor, and an x plus 3 factor to make the lowest common denominator. So then to make this the common denominator, I'm missing an x plus 2, so I have to do that to the top and bottom. Here I'm missing an x plus 1. So I've now generated my common denominator. I can rewrite this fraction with a common denominator and add them together. So this expression now becomes x plus 1 plus 1 times x plus 2. Okay, and then we end up with our common denominator of x plus 1, x plus 2, x plus 3. Combine like terms. Reminder that these are not this is not a factor up here because it's connected with a plus. So we have to combine those terms. So it's 2x plus 3 in the numerator, and in the denominator is our lowest common denominator. Okay, so when we are dealing with fractions, we need to look at the factor pieces to get the lowest common denominator. So here the lowest common denominator between 12 and 8 is 24, and we can see how we generate 24 in the same process that we did up here with the factors. 12 has the factors 3 times 2 times 2. 8 has the factors of 2 times 2 times 2. This is missing a factor of 2 because we have 3 2's here. We only have 2 here. So multiplying by 2 gives us our common denominator of 24. Here we're missing a factor of 3, so multiplying by a factor of 3 gives us the common denominator of 24. And to balance, we need to make sure we do the top and bottom. To balance, we need to make sure we do the top and bottom by that same factor that was introduced. Okay, so the same process, if you can think of it in terms of the number factors, it works the same way with the binomial factors. But we just have to make sure that we are clear when we have a factored form of a binomial of the quadratic here, and when it's factored or not factored. When we have factor pieces, that's what we want, because the fractions are all to do with the times and divide pieces that make them up.